Thank you for staying with us. And to our very first story today, and Ghana's fourth Eurobond has been oversubscribed with orders exceeding $2 billion compared to a target of $1 billion. Now, according to a statement released by the Finance Ministry, this represents an oversubscription of more than 100%, indicating the high appetite for Ghana's credit. Now, what exactly does this mean? Now, let's get some analysis from economist Dr. Eric Osesibe, who joins me live now over the telephone. Dr. Osesibe, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you. And we have been hearing a lot of things from government as pertains to this particular Eurobond issue. Now, should we be glad about it? Is there anything worth celebrating about this particular Eurobond?
Well, I don't think so. And I also don't know why we are still talking about oversubscription. Because if you go in for 1.5 billion and you come home with 1 billion, then it's quite interesting for the Finance Ministry to be talking about oversubscription in this case. What it means is that although the demand was high, but the interest rate that many of them were offering were much too high, and therefore they couldn't have accepted all of them. They couldn't have accepted all of them. And so I would not say they were oversubscription, because if someone comes and says that, okay, I will buy it, but I will demand 15 or 20% of interest, and you reject it, I do not still think it's an oversubscription here.
So what could governments have done? You are saying this is not something we should overly be excited about, but the fact still remains that we have gotten the money, and government says we are going to use the money for some projects. This money that has come in, do we see it as money that can self-finance itself?
Well, it's interesting, because if you look at the interest rate that we are paying, about 11% of interest is one of the highest in the world today.
10.75 actually.
Sorry?
Yes, I was just saying it's 10.75 actually, but you can go on.
Yeah, that's 11 points. When you run it up, it's 11%,
sure.
10.75, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's 11%. That's what I'm saying. And so it's one of the highest today. It's very much on the highest side, because in the Americans today, they are paying interest rate no more than 2% on a similar Euro bond. And so the issue is, are we going to be able to invest this money to get that high returns from such an investment in order for us to be able to pay the interest? Not only that, the repayment period. You know, these monies are being contracted in foreign currency, and therefore you have to repay it in foreign currency. Now, if you take the exchange rate into consideration, there is an element of exchange rate risk. If your currency depreciates so much and you have to mobilize this money in local currency, then it means that your exchange burden, I mean the amount that you're going to pay in terms of the Ghana cedi, is going to be much higher. And that in itself can even lead to further depreciation of your domestic currency. It weakens your domestic currency. So we have to be mindful of this high cost on this loan. For me, the only good side about it is that it is in long term. The tenure is long, that is about 15 years, one of the highest so far. But that does not take away the fact that the cost of this money is far too high.
Dr. Osesibe, you have to an extent told us about some of the implications, but I want to know, for the layman, for the ordinary Ghanaian, how bad is this situation for us?
Well, I mean, for an ordinary Ghanaian, what it means is that the debt burden of government has gone up, because the debt stock would increase in terms of net, because most of these monies are going to be used for refinancing. And here again, that is where I have a problem with when we say that we are going to invest this money in infrastructure, because according to the finance minister this morning, the money is going to be used to refinance retiring or maturing debt. And so we cannot for sure tell whether these monies that were contracted earlier on actually went directly into infrastructure. Now, that
Dr. Osesibe, can you hear me?
Yeah, hello.
Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, we missed you there a bit, but you can continue.
Okay, I'm saying that if we say for an ordinary Ghanaian, it means a lot because it means that the cost of borrowing has gone up.
Okay.
And if the cost of borrowing has gone up, it can have an implication on domestic interest rates. It can have an implication on the debt servicing, or that is the debt payment in terms of service. Because once the repayment, and this loan has to be paid in every 3 months, every 3 years. So in every 3 years, we are paying part of the principal as much as the interest rate. And so the debt servicing obligation of the government can go up significantly. And that can also affect government's ability to consolidate, to reduce the expenditures. And in that order, if the money were going directly into infrastructure, new or resources or new infrastructure, I would have said yes, we are getting additional infrastructure. But as of now, we still have high or large deficit of infrastructure. Our energy situation is not one of the best. The roads are still not one of the best. Yet we are saying that we are using this money to retire maturing debt, and we are expecting to pay interest rates on this money. Where are the money going to come from?
So clearly, you don't see this as the right move made by government. What would have been the better option?
I think we could have waited for a little longer, because the government rightly came out just about 2 days ago to say that it is not going further with the Eurobond because the market conditions were not right. So I do not know what has changed within the 2 days, because nothing has changed with regard to the market conditions. The fundamentals, or the market fundamentals, still remain very weak. The U.S. Is still tapering off. The interest rate in the U.S. is still going up, and so I think that nothing really has changed. I don't know why government immediately changed its mind to go in for this loan. And we are also not getting the entire 1.5 billion. We are only getting 1 billion, which indicates to you that what investors were actually asking for very high. That is the interest rate. And so even with the 1 billion, we are still paying about 11%. So I think we could have still waited a little longer to ensure that the market conditions were right to get a very good deal than we have now.
Dr. Sesbe, thank you very much for your time on Newsdesk. And I know you're actually going for a meeting, so we really appreciate your time on the show this morning. And that's Dr. Eric Osesbe is an economist. He's been telling us much more about what really it means for exactly the fourth Eurobond has been oversubscribed, what really it does mean, the implications it has for us as a country. But my colleague George Uafe is also here in the studio with me, and he has been following this issue keenly, and in fact he has been interacting with the finance minister. We can get much more from him on that. So George, you have been interacting with the finance minister. Dr. Eric Osesbe mentioned a number of issues, raised a number of concerns, particularly the fact that the market doesn't look too conducive now. So he wonders why government would still go ahead to subscribe to such a bond. What reasons did the finance minister give?
Well, the finance minister sought to explain that basically what are the options available. We didn't actually put that direct question to him, but in trying to understand what he was trying to communicate, the challenge is that what are the options available? The options available is to do more of a tax hikes or new taxes to be introduced on the market to take care of this challenge. So if you have a serious funding gap in trying to meet your debt obligations, trying to pay off these debts that are maturing, the option that is left for you is to go ahead and then raise these funds at this particular rate and use it to finance or take care of your debts that are maturing or are due for repayment as somebody who owes several investors and institutions.
Okay, so does the minister speak of, for instance, exactly, does he tell us what really this money is going to be used for?
I mean, what you get from the minister is basically the fact that it will be used to actually restructure, pay off some debt. So initially going into this Eurobond, we got the understanding that they were raising, or they're going to raise up to $1.5 billion. Sorry.
Sure.
Now, $500 million of that is supposed to go and pay investors who bought into our previous bonds. That will be maturing in 2017. The minister said that they want to pay off, or he wants to pay off these debts before they actually mature, or for those who want to get out right now, I'll pay you. So $500 million was going to pay those investors. Now, when is left for this $1 billion? Part of that was supposed to go into projects that were outlined in the budget. These might not necessarily be fresh projects, but ongoing projects. If you just look at the circular interchange, even though it's been sponsored by the Brazilian government, there's a portion of it we call counterpart funding that should be coming from the host country. So you could see that a lot of these road projects or ongoing projects dotted all over the country, there's a portion that government is supposed to finance. This Eurobond was supposed to do that. You could talk about some domestic bonds that have been issued already that will be maturing. We know that there's a 3-year bond that's going to mature, I think, this month or next month. That government has to cough out 500 million Ghana
so
cedis
essentially,
to pay off.
some of a portion of this money is to service
that was based on the initial amount. None of this money has reduced. The minister is saying that, well, we had that window to stretch it to 1.5 billion. So we just restricted ourselves. But again, in trying to engage him or push him further, you got the understanding that if we're going out to raise all the $1.5 billion, then the cost would have been about 15%. Now, let me try and break it down again.
Exactly.
In terms of the interest payments that they'll be paying, every year we should be looking at somewhere around $108 million. This is just the interest being serviced. So if we break it down to every 3 months or every 6 months, it rounds up to this amount of money every year just as interest. You need to put these monies in areas that can pay for itself for you to, again, say that you can pay these debts. So, for instance, if you're looking at financing a road project, then that road project has to be towed. Because if you look at the period, it has to be towed so that money can be raised and then used to service this debt. Now, if these monies are not going into projects that are self-financing, then there's a challenge there. But the argument we get from the minister is also that maybe you want to use this money, it's interesting, to pay off the debts that are maturing. That could help reduce the interest that you're paying on domestic borrowing because you paid it off and then it's clean your balance sheet. Then maybe go in again, raise money at a cheaper fund or cheaper rate and try to use it to finance other debts that are available. So it's quite an interesting dynamics here. But it's more of what are the options that are available. Favorable time, abandon the bond now. I don't know, going into the end of this year, there's a global squeeze in credit because of the uncertainty. Every investor out there is holding on to his or her funds. There's this prediction that before the end of this year, the American government is going to hike up their rate. And when you talk about one of the safest people who would borrow from you is the American government. So for those institutional investors out there, those hedge funds managers out there, they will prefer to invest with the American government. So it's a time where everybody's holding on to his capital. How do you convince these investors that give the money to me, Ghana, as a corporate entity, so I can use it for A, B, C, D, and pay you back? So all these things were priced into the interest they're supposed
but George,
to pay.
Interesting you raise such points, but at the very same time we were contracting this Eurobond. Poland and Portugal were also contracting a similar one, and at a rate of about 0.9%.
Well, you want to look at a lot of things in going to this. It's just like, let me take you as a borrower. Let's compare you to Mr. Kosichum, who is going to Barclays Bank to borrow. Now, they'll do a profiling of you. So in terms of your ability, your credit worthiness, people give you money and try to project into the outlook. Even if you don't have money today, what is the outlook like for you? Tomorrow, will I see you moving into upgrading your position here at multimedia or multi-TV to maybe an editorship to get more money? Or do I see Kosichum making more acquisitions so that his finances might improve? If I'm lending to Kosichum, if I'm lending to you, the interest that Kosichum might pay compared to you might be different, because there is a risk that you might not be able to pay those debts on time. And I'll price that risk into the loan I'm giving to you. So it has to be separated. Well, maybe some would say comparing apples and oranges. Let's look at our African peers. Ivory Coast did a similar borrowing. But again, you also want to look at what was the time of the borrowing. Did they do a 10-year a 5-year or a 15-year. South Africa was the first country to do that. So what I'm just trying to explain here is that, yes, these rates do matter, but a lot of things go into profiling you as an individual, profiling you if you are Ghana, to assess your credit worthiness and give you those funds. So Poland might have maybe an A- rating, which tells people that is an investment grade. We have a B1, a B negative, which you try to explain to a layman. When I'm going to lend to you and you have that rating, I'm going to tell that commercial bank that, listen, this guy is not credit worthy. This guy cannot pay these monies on time. And all those things are factored into the pricing of that loan.
But even with a guarantee from the World Bank, that's the final question anyway.
Again, you want to, again, these are questions people are asking themselves. What role did this guarantee actually play? Because when you're going onto the market to attract big institutions to lend you money, basically it's about government going out there, convincing a bank like JP Morgan that, listen, I need X amount of money, $500 million to do ABCD. Lend it to me. Every year, I'll pay you X amount of money. When the time is due, I'll pay you everything. So you need to convince people. That is what makes it a sovereign, because I'm coming that me, as George Jaffe, gave me money. Forget about where I'm working, forget about my family, forget about my assets. Now you have an external institution coming in to support you. It raises questions about whether you are sovereign as a country itself. So it didn't do much, some might say, because for some of these institutional investors, they want to assess you based on your sovereign. And the World Bank didn't issue 100% protection or guarantee. It was just part. So that extra amount of money, which the risk was still there, was factored into this loan. And that's why we are paying almost 11%. The minister said if he had raised 1.5 billion, should have been paying 15%.
Interesting there. That was George Jaffe of our business desk bringing us up to speed on that particular Eurobond, the fourth Eurobond Ghana has actually contracted over the period. We're taking a break here on News Desk. We'll be back shortly with some more. Don't go away.